Caught my husband flirting with a female student again. I lost it and wrecked the house. My mother-in-law criticized me for not being able to handle my husband, and my sister-in-law said I deserved it. I wanted divorce. Ethan threatened me with our child, so I endured it for the child's sake. I never expected I'd endure it for a lifetime. Ethan lived a carefree life while I devoted myself to him, and he passed away peacefully. After a lifetime of toil, my children resented me, and I died alone in a rented room. Then, miraculously, I got a second chance and found myself back before the divorce. I opened my eyes to see my long-dead mother-in-law berating me. "Nora, how dare you destroy my house? Are you out of your mind? All he did was chat with a female student, and you act like a wild animal with no manners. You can't control your husband, but you blame him. Well, you deserve this. If you've got the guts, get a divorce. My son is a university professor, and you're just a housewife. Let's see who wants you after that." "Mom, don't worry. She wouldn't dare divorce him," my sister-in-law Harper said with a smirk. It was her who had egged my mother-in-law on to slap me. Still daring to break things? I'll beat you senseless. My father-in-law sitting in his wheelchair mumbled hit hit. I knew he was urging Ethan to hit me. With a swollen face, I turned to see Ethan sitting on the sofa watching TV. I asked Ethan, "Your mom wants you to divorce me. Do you agree?" Ethan didn't even look up. "I don't care. Divorce if you want." I said fine. I agreed to divorce. "Let's go to City Hall tomorrow." "What is City Hall?" Ethan laughed. "We can divorce, but don't think you'll take the child. There are no joint savings, so you won't get a cent." Here we go again. I, Nora, used to be fiery. The first time you cheated, I asked for a divorce. But Ethan knew me well, always using the child to threaten me. The child. My mother-in-law was about to say something, but Harper stopped her. They knew the child was my weak spot. Mention the child, and I'd endure anything. But now I don't care about the child anymore. I feel fortunate that life has given me another chance. This time I won't sacrifice my happiness for anyone else. I didn't say anything, just like before. I got up and went back to the room. "Mom, see? She wouldn't dare divorce." I ignored Harper's words, smirked, and started packing. Actually, it wasn't my room. It was the small room outside my father-in-law's. After his stroke, he needed someone around. I thought I'd take care of him during the day, and my mother-in-law would at night so I could rest. But she claimed she had a nerve disorder, couldn't stay up, and any noise kept her awake. She made me move to the small room to take care of him. I was furious. Ethan slept comfortably in the big bedroom every night. Now I decided, whoever wants to take care of him can. Doesn't my mother-in-law always say I'm unfilial in the community? Fine, I'll be unfilial. Let Ethan be the filial son. I quickly packed my bed and moved to the master bedroom. Seeing me move to the master bedroom, Ethan frowned and followed me in. "What are you doing moving in here? What about when Dad needs the bathroom or water at night?" I threw Ethan's clothes out. "We're getting divorced. Your dad isn't my dad. Whoever's dad he is can take care of him. What's wrong with you? Haven't you caused enough trouble?" I smiled. "So what if I'm causing trouble?" He said I was causing trouble. I used to think I really was. Arguing with him was trouble. Smashing things was trouble. Not eating was trouble. But now I know hurting myself isn't causing trouble, making them suffer is. See, just moving out of the small room and Ethan couldn't wait to come talk to me. In the house, Ethan barely spoke to me more than 3 times a day. Turns out only by causing trouble can they feel uncomfortable. Ethan left the room with a sullen face. I didn't care what his family said outside. I changed the sheets and went to shower. Normally, this was the time to pick up the child. After picking them up, I'd hurry to cook. After dinner, I'd clean and then help the child with homework. After homework, I'd bathe the child. Finally, I'd clean, bathe, and medicate my father-in-law. Only when he slept did I have a bit of time for myself. At home, I was like a workhorse. After my shower, I started calculating my savings. I graduated from community college and got married after a few years of work. After marriage, Ethan's salary went to his mom, and I had to report weekly for grocery money. For money, I had to ask my mother-in-law. Ethan wouldn't give me any money, but over the years, I wasn't without income. My English is excellent. Occasionally doing part-time jobs, I'd earn a few hundred each time. I now have over 10,000 in savings. Very little. But after divorce, it's enough to get by until I find a job, and I don't have to worry about the house. This house was left to me by my parents. It's very large. It's premarital property. Ethan can't take it. When I got married, Ethan brought his parents over, and before Harper married, she lived with us too. Now I realize Ethan probably married me for the house. His family planned to take everything from the start. This time I won't compromise. I'll kick them all out. At this moment, my mother-in-law pounded on the door. "Nora, what are you doing inside? The child is about to get out of school. Aren't you going to pick them up? The floor is a mess. Lazy." I opened the door. "They don't like me picking them up. Let Ethan go." My mother-in-law shrieked, "Ethan can't do such things." "Why not? The child isn't just mine. Fine, don't pick them up, nobody will. This is my mother-in-law's usual trick. I used to see the family not working. Got angry, but thinking of the child, I'd give in. I'd silently do everything. This time, I wouldn't give in. Soon I heard a bang outside the door. I guessed my mother-in-law left. She wouldn't be back before dinner. I opened the door to see the living room, apart from the mess. Only my father in his wheelchair. I pretended not to see. I went to the study and turned on the computer, started looking for a job. My English is truly good. I studied business trade in community college and love English, never giving it up. I wrote my resume and sent it to over 100 companies. After that, I went straight to the bedroom, laid on the bed, and started sleeping. I was too tired. Didn't want to think or care about anything. Where's the food? Why hasn't anyone cooked? Are you dead? Lying at home not cooking? Not cleaning the floor? Ethan, look at the woman you found, lazy and useless. Lying at home not even cooking? Is she asking for a beating? My mother-in-law's voice woke me. I impatiently pulled the covers over my head. Get up! Ethan came in at some point. I got angry, sprang up. What's wrong with you? Can't you see I'm sleeping? Ethan snapped. Sleep, sleep, sleep. It's still early. Why haven't you cooked dinner? I'm not eating. Not for you. Mom wants you to cook. Why haven't you? I was surprised. Are you deaf or dumb? I said, I'm not eating. Whoever eats cooks. You're doing this on purpose. What did my mom do to you? Nora, don't push it. I'm pushing. What will you do about it? Divorce me. Leave. Go find your precious Grace. Let her serve your whole family. Ethan took deep breaths. Fine, don't cook. Let the kids starve. I rolled my eyes. Same old trick. Nothing new. While we argued, the two kids came home. Lily and Logan are twins, 9 years old this year. Logan saw us arguing as soon as he entered. Mom, why are you arguing with Dad again? Can't you be quiet? Lily nodded. Yeah, Mom, your voice is so loud, and you didn't pick us up today. Ethan sternly said, Look at your mom. What has she become? Don't ever learn from her. Like a shrew, uncivilized. I almost choked with anger. I coldly looked at the two I gave birth to. Genes are indeed powerful. Logan and Lily completely inherited the selfish traits of the Ethan family. They always saw me shouting at home and always stood by Ethan. In the past life, when I was dying, they thought of throwing me out, not taking me to the doctor. I figured it out, husband and children mean nothing. A husband and children like this, I'd rather not have. I smiled coldly. Fine, I won't argue with your dad. Hurry and take him out, I have a headache today. You two don't bother me. The two little ones looked at each other, not understanding why I stopped arguing just like that. Every time they see me, it's during a loud argument at home, and they always take Ethan's side. In the past, when I was seriously ill, all they thought about was how to get rid of me instead of taking me to see a doctor. I finally figured it out. Who needs a husband and children like this? I'd rather not have them. I forced a smile and said, Okay, I won't argue with your dad. Go ahead and take him away. I have a headache today. Don't come in and disturb me. The two kids exchanged puzzled glances, not quite understanding why I suddenly stopped arguing. Ethan snapped, The kids are home and you're still in bed? Go make dinner. I ignored him completely. Ethan shouted, Nora, didn't you hear me? Seeing no reaction, he continued, Are you deaf? I'm telling you to make dinner. How long are you going to keep this up? I told you, I was just having a normal conversation with a student. Aren't you being too controlling? What will others think of me? I got up and motioned for the two kids to come over. When Lily and Logan came, I said, I'm not arguing right now, it's your dad who's yelling. Can you ask him to quiet down? He's a professor, but has no manners. Don't learn from him. He's acting like a madman. The kids looked up at Ethan. Dad, stop arguing. My mother-in-law barged in, pushing the kids aside. What do you two know? Your dad is disciplining his own wife. Lily got pushed and immediately fell, crying loudly. My mother-in-law sneered at me. What are you crying for, you worthless girl? Did someone die in the family for you to cry like this? In the past, I would have rushed to hug Lily and argue with my mother-in-law. But now I'm not that naive. The kids used to be swayed by her words, forgetting everything from when they were small. They'd tell me to be forgiving. Now I want to see if they remember her kindness without my protection. Ethan frowned at his mom. All right, Mom, enough. Go make dinner. She widened her eyes. Me? What about her? Ethan was speechless. She's not feeling well today. This time, you do it. I looked at her coldly. See, if you're determined enough, you can make anything happen. After she left, Ethan took the kids out. I called after him. Don't forget to go to City Hall tomorrow to get the papers. Ethan scoffed as he walked out with the children, slamming the door behind him. I laid back down on the bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling an odd sense of peace. This was different. In my previous life, I would have been in the kitchen by now, cooking for a family that never appreciated me, swallowing my resentment for the sake of keeping the household together. But this time, I had no intention of continuing that cycle. Let them fend for themselves. I had more important things to do. I grabbed my phone and checked my emails. A few companies had already responded to my applications, some requesting interviews, others rejecting me outright. I wasn't discouraged, I had just started. If there was one thing I had learned from my past life, it was that I had to rely on myself. I began making a list of things I needed to do: find a lawyer, separate my finances, and most importantly, figure out custody of the children. Not because I felt the same attachment as before, but because I knew Ethan would try to use them as weapons. He always did. In my last life, I had let him win because I had been too afraid of losing them. Now I saw the truth. I had already lost them long ago. I wouldn't let them be my weakness again. The sound of dishes clattering in the kitchen signaled that my mother-in-law had finally given in and was making dinner. I smirked. For years, she had treated me like a servant, barking orders, ridiculing me for every perceived flaw. Now, with just a little resistance, she was already bending. I had been a fool in my past life to think I was powerless. The power had been mine all along. I had just never used it. Ethan returned late that night, dragging the kids along with him. Logan and Lily were tired and irritable, clearly unused to their father taking care of them. He dumped their bags on the floor and turned to me with a sneer. "Congratulations, Nora. You got what you wanted. Mom had to cook. The kids are upset. Are you happy now?" I stretched my arms, feigning a yawn. "Very. You should get used to it. After all, I won't be around much longer." His jaw clenched, his eyes darkening with frustration. "You're serious about this divorce?" "Did you think I was joking?" I asked, tilting my head. "We'll go to City Hall tomorrow. I'm done playing this game." He scoffed, rubbing his temples. "You're being dramatic. Fine, we'll go. But don't think for a second that you're getting custody, and you won't see a dime from me." "I don't need your money, Ethan," I said, standing up. "And as for the kids, we'll see what the court has to say about that." He laughed, a cruel sound. "Oh, come on. The court? You really think they'll side with you? You're just a housewife. I'm a respected professor. You have no job, no income, nothing." I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "Not for long." His expression faltered just for a second. That was all I needed to know, that I was getting under his skin. That night, I slept better than I had in years. When morning came, I woke up before everyone else, dressed in my best outfit, and grabbed my purse. Ethan staggered out of the bedroom, still groggy. "Where are you going?" he asked suspiciously. "City Hall," I said simply. "Get dressed." He blinked at me, clearly not expecting me to be so eager. "Are you serious?" "Ethan," I said patiently, "stop asking me that. I'm not playing around. You said it yourself. You don't care if we get divorced, so let's get it over with." I saw the hesitation in his eyes. He had always expected me to back down, to cry, to beg. This was new to him, but I had no more tears left to shed for this man. "Fine," he muttered, turning back into the room. "Give me a few minutes." The car ride was silent, tense. Ethan was gripping the steering wheel too tightly, his knuckles white. I could feel his anger simmering beneath the surface. But I didn't care. The old me would have been terrified of his mood, trying to placate him, to smooth things over. But I wasn't that woman anymore. When we arrived, I walked ahead without waiting for him. Inside the office, a clerk greeted us, asking for our paperwork. Ethan hesitated, then turned to me. "Are you really going to do this?" he asked, quieter this time. "There's no turning back after this." I met his gaze steadily. "That's the point." He exhaled sharply, but said nothing more. We signed the documents, went through the process, and then, just like that, it was over. I was free. Except Ethan didn't seem to think so. As soon as we stepped outside, he grabbed my wrist, his grip firm but not enough to hurt. "This isn't over, Nora." I pulled away. "Yes, it is. Now get out of my way." I walked past him, my heart pounding, but I refused to look back. When I got home, I found my mother-in-law pacing the living room. She turned on me the moment I entered. "What have you done? You really went through with it?" she screeched. I tossed my purse onto the couch. "Yes." "You ungrateful. After everything my son did for you, after everything this family gave you." I laughed, cutting her off. "Gave me? You mean the years of servitude? The humiliation? The betrayal? If that's your idea of generosity, I want no part of it." Her face turned red with rage. "You won't get away with this. Ethan won't let you take the children." "Let him try," I said coolly. "You forget. This house is mine. You and your husband need to pack your things and get out." Her mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. For the first time, she looked truly afraid. Ethan returned later that night, and I was waiting for him. "You need to move out," I said before he could even speak. He laughed. "You really think you can kick me out of my own home?" It's not your home, it's mine. My name is on the deed. You were a guest. Now you're not. His smirk faded. You wouldn't. Watch me. That night, I changed the locks. Ethan and his mother banged on the door, screaming threats, but I didn't care. I sat in my empty house sipping tea, feeling lighter than I ever had. The war wasn't over, but for the first time, I knew I had already won. The pounding on the door didn't stop for nearly an hour. Ethan shouted threats, his mother shrieked insults, and his father, who rarely spoke, let out occasional grunts of disapproval. I sipped my tea in silence, ignoring them. Eventually, the noise stopped, and I assumed they had finally realized that I was serious. I had changed the locks, and there was no way they were getting in without my permission. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Ethan. You think you can just throw me out? We'll see about that. I smirked. Let him try. In my past life, I had been too afraid to stand up to him, too terrified of losing everything. Now I realized I had nothing to lose. The next morning, I woke up feeling lighter than I had in years. The house was finally quiet, free from the constant presence of Ethan's family. I made myself a simple breakfast, sat at the table, and pulled out my laptop. It was time to start planning my new life. I checked my email and saw that a few more companies had responded to my applications. One in particular caught my attention. A well-known international trading company was interested in an interview. My heart pounded with excitement. This was it. My chance to rebuild, to prove to myself that I was more than just Ethan's discarded wife. But before I could reply, the doorbell rang. I sighed, already knowing who it was. I walked over and looked through the peephole. As expected, Ethan was standing outside looking furious. His mother was with him, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. I hesitated for only a second before unlocking the door and opening it slightly, just enough to glare at them through the gap. What do you want? Ethan shoved his foot in the door before I could close it again. We need to talk, he said, his voice tight with restrained anger. We have nothing to talk about, I said coolly. You don't live here anymore. Move. His mother pushed forward. How dare you? This is my son's house. You think just because you threw him out, it's over? You have no right to do this. I laughed, leaning against the doorframe. I have every right. This house belongs to me. You lived here because I allowed it. Now I don't. Ethan clenched his jaw. You really think you can just erase me from your life? That's the plan, I said, smiling sweetly. His mother screeched. You won't get away with this. The children belong with their father. You can't separate them. I'm not separating them, I said with a shrug. Ethan is free to take care of them anytime he wants. He can cook for them, clean for them, help them with their homework. Oh wait, that was always my job, wasn't it? Ethan glared at me. This isn't over, Nora. It is for me, I said. And with that, I slammed the door in their faces. As I leaned against the door, I took a deep breath. The old me would have been shaking, terrified of what Ethan might do next. But now, I felt something else entirely. Power. I was no longer at his mercy. He could scream, threaten, manipulate all he wanted. It didn't matter. I was free. That afternoon, I replied to the email and set up an interview for the next day. As I prepared, I couldn't help but reflect on how much had changed in such a short amount of time. A week ago, I was a woman trapped in a miserable life, convinced that I had no way out. Now, I was standing on my own, making choices for myself, rebuilding from nothing. The next morning, I woke up early, dressed in the best professional outfit I had, and took a deep breath before heading out. The interview was in a sleek office building downtown. As I walked in, I felt a strange mix of excitement and nerves. I hadn't worked in years, but I knew I was capable. I had to be. The interviewer, a sharp-looking woman in her 40s, studied my resume with a critical eye. You haven't worked in a while, she said. Why the long gap? I met her gaze confidently. I was married, I said simply, but now I'm not, and I'm ready to focus on my career. She raised an eyebrow. That's quite a shift. I'm determined, I said firmly. I'm fluent in English, I have experience in trade, and I'm willing to prove myself. She considered me for a moment, then nodded. All right, we'll give you a chance. Can you start next week? My breath caught in my throat. Just like that? Yes, I said quickly. Absolutely. As I walked out of the building, I felt a sense of victory unlike anything I had ever known. This was the beginning of my new life. But of course, Ethan wasn't done trying to ruin it. When I got home, I found him waiting for me outside. He was leaning against his car, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. We need to talk, he said as soon as he saw me. I sighed. Ethan, I don't have time for this. It's about the kids. I hesitated. As much as I had distanced myself from them, I knew I couldn't ignore this conversation forever. Fine, I said. Make it quick. He straightened. They're confused, Nora. You just threw them into this mess. They don't understand why you're acting this way. I crossed my arms. They don't understand, or they don't like that I'm not their servant anymore? Ethan's jaw tightened. They're children. And they'll adapt, I said firmly. They were fine with watching me suffer. Now they can get used to seeing me happy. He stared at me for a long moment. You've changed. Yes, I said. And I'm never going back. He exhaled, shaking his head. We'll see about that. Then he got into his car and drove away. As I watched him leave, I felt nothing but certainty. He could try all he wanted. He could use the children, his family, his threats. It didn't matter, because this time I wasn't going to break. I had finally taken control of my life, and I wasn't giving it back. The silence in the house was something I was still getting used to. No more constant demands, no more insults disguised as concern, no more endless chores that never seemed to be enough. It felt almost unnatural to have time for myself, but I embraced it. My first day at work was fast approaching, and I spent the next few days preparing, buying a few new outfits with the money I had saved, reviewing industry trends, and refreshing my skills. I was determined to succeed, not just to prove Ethan and his family wrong, but to prove to myself that I could do this. Every night, I slept soundly, free from the weight that had crushed me for so long. However, I knew it wouldn't last. Ethan wasn't the kind of man to accept defeat easily, and I was right. On the morning of my first day at work, I woke up feeling excited and anxious. I dressed carefully, choosing a navy blue blouse and tailored pants that made me feel powerful. As I stepped out of my house, I saw Ethan's car parked across the street. He was leaning against it, arms crossed, watching me. I ignored him and walked toward the bus stop, but he moved quickly, stepping in front of me. We need to talk. I exhaled sharply. Ethan, I'm going to be late for work. I don't have time for this. His eyes narrowed slightly. So you really got a job? Obviously, I said, stepping around him. He caught my wrist. Nora, listen to me. His grip wasn't tight, but it was enough to make my skin crawl. Let go of me. The kids are struggling with this. You just left them. They're confused, Nora. I yanked my hand free. I didn't leave them. They were never really with me, Ethan. They always chose you. Now, they can live with that choice. His jaw clenched. They're children. Exactly, I said coldly. So start acting like a father and take care of them. I walked away without another word, leaving him standing there. My first day at work was better than I expected. My boss, Ms. Carter, was professional but fair, and my coworkers seemed welcoming. It felt strange being in an environment where people actually valued my skills, where my time and effort meant something. I worked hard, determined to make a good impression. By the end of the day, my feet ached, but my heart felt lighter than it had in years. When I arrived home, I was met with an unwelcome sight. Harper standing on my doorstep, arms crossed, looking furious. What do you want? I asked, already exhausted. What do I want? She snapped. I want to know what the hell you think you're doing. Abandoning my brother, leaving your kids to starve, acting like some selfish... Stop talking, I interrupted, stepping past her to unlock my door. I don't have time for this. She grabbed my arm and I turned sharply. Touch me again, and I will call the police, Harper. She hesitated, then scoffed. You're such a bitch now, huh? Acting like you're better than us? I laughed. I was always better than you. I was just too blind to see it. Her face twisted in rage, but before she could say anything, I stepped inside and slammed the door in her face. Days passed, and I adjusted quickly to my new life. Work kept me busy, and I started feeling a sense of fulfillment I had never known before. I was earning my own money, making my own decisions, and no longer bending to anyone's will. I didn't check in on Ethan or the kids, and I ignored the calls from my mother-in-law. If they needed something, they could figure it out themselves. For once, I was living for me. But Ethan wasn't done. One evening, as I was leaving work, I found him waiting outside the building. He looked different, more disheveled, his shirt wrinkled, his face unshaven. He stepped forward as I approached. We need to talk. I sighed. Again? Ethan, this is getting pathetic. It's about the kids, he said, his voice tight. Logan is failing his classes. Lily won't stop crying at night. They miss you. I crossed my arms. And maybe this isn't working, he said, running a hand through his hair. Maybe you should come home. I stared at him for a moment before laughing. Come home? I repeated. Ethan, I don't think you understand. There is no home. There's just a house where you, your mother, and your sister made me miserable for years. I'm not coming back. His expression darkened. Nora, think about the kids. They need you. No, I said sharply. They need a father who actually parents them. They need to learn that actions have consequences. You made them this way, Ethan. Now deal with it. His hands clenched into fists. "You're being cruel." "No," I said. "For once in my life, I'm being fair." I stepped past him, but he grabbed my wrist again. "I won't let you do this." I turned, looking him dead in the eye. "And what exactly do you think you can do to stop me?" He didn't answer. His grip tightened for a moment before he finally let go. "This isn't over." "It is for me," I said, walking away without looking back. I knew Ethan wouldn't give up easily, but I also knew one thing. No matter what he tried, I would never go back. This time, I was truly free, and I would fight to keep it that way. I should have known Ethan wouldn't let things go so easily. The first time he had cheated on me, I had threatened divorce, but he had manipulated me with the children, making me believe that I was the problem, that I was too controlling, too emotional, too irrational, but I wasn't that woman anymore. I had spent too many years sacrificing myself for a family that never truly considered me one of their own. And now that I had a second chance, I was going to use it wisely. For the next few days, I ignored every attempt Ethan made to contact me. He called, texted, and even had the children call from different numbers, but I didn't answer. It wasn't that I didn't care. It was that I had already spent a lifetime caring too much for people who never deserved it. I threw myself into my work, excelling faster than I expected. My boss, Ms. Carter, was impressed with my efficiency and my ability to handle negotiations fluently in English, and within 2 weeks, she hinted at the possibility of a raise if I continued at this pace. It was strange having someone recognize my worth, something Ethan had never done. The more time I spent at work, the more I realized how much of my potential had been wasted in my marriage. How I had allowed myself to shrink into the role of an obedient wife, a thankless mother, a powerless daughter-in-law, but that Nora was gone, and I wasn't letting her come back. One evening, after a particularly long day, I walked home with my thoughts still circling around a client meeting when I noticed a familiar figure standing in front of my building. Ethan. He looked worse than before. His hair was unkempt, his clothes slightly wrinkled, and for the first time, he looked like someone who wasn't in control. As soon as he saw me, he straightened, his usual arrogance slipping into place. "We need to talk." I rolled my eyes. "We've talked enough. Go home, Ethan." "I am home," he said, crossing his arms.
"You don't get to just erase me from your life like this, Nora. We have history. We have children." I stepped past him, unlocking the door to the building, but he grabbed my wrist. I turned slowly, my patience gone. "Let me go." "Not until you listen." His grip wasn't tight enough to hurt, but it was firm enough to make my skin crawl.
"You think you're so much better now that you have a job? That you can just walk away from your responsibilities? Logan and Lily are miserable without you. Mom is what?" I snapped. "Mad that she doesn't have a servant anymore? Harper must be devastated too, right? No one to cook for her? To clean up after her? How tragic." He exhaled sharply, his jaw tightening. "You've changed." "Yes," I said, yanking my hand free, "and that's a good thing." I walked inside and shut the door in his face, locking it behind me. For the next week, I kept my distance, not responding to calls or messages, but I knew Ethan. I knew he wasn't done, and I was right. One evening, as I was preparing for bed, there was a loud banging on my door. I frowned, checking the time. It was almost midnight. My heart pounded as I grabbed my phone, stepping cautiously toward the door. "Who is it?" I called, though I already knew the answer. "Mom?" It was Logan's voice. My grip on the doorknob tightened. "Logan?" "Mom, please open the door." There was a hesitation in his voice, something I couldn't quite place. I unlocked the door, and as soon as I did, Logan pushed his way in, followed by Lily, both of them looking exhausted. My eyes narrowed. "What are you two doing here? Does your father know?" "Dad dropped us off," Lily interrupted, her lip trembling. "He said you wanted us to live with you now." My stomach twisted. "What?" Logan nodded, rubbing his eyes. "Dad said if you want to leave him so badly, then you can have us. He drove us here and left." I felt something cold settle in my chest. Ethan was retaliating. He thought if he dumped the children on me, I would crack under the pressure, that I would come running back, begging for things to go back to the way they were. I took a slow breath, kneeling to their level. "Did he say anything else?" Lily sniffled. "He said we're your problem now." I clenched my fists. "Of course he did." Logan looked up at me, his expression unreadable. "You don't want us either, do you?" The question made my breath catch. For years, I had given everything to my children, only to have them turn against me, only to have them side with their father without a second thought. But they were just children, raised in an environment that taught them I was disposable. I had a choice now. I could shut the door on them the way they had once shut it on me, or I could do what I wished someone had done for me. I could teach them that love wasn't conditional, that it wasn't manipulation. I exhaled, standing up, anding, "Come inside. You can sleep here tonight." Lily let out a relieved sob, running inside, but Logan hesitated. "But you don't want us." "I want you to be safe," I said. "Now go inside." He swallowed hard before nodding and stepping inside. As I closed the door, I realized something. Ethan thought this would break me. But he had just given me the one thing he never wanted me to have: power. Because now I had the chance to raise my children away from his influence, to show them that love wasn't a weapon, to teach them how to be better than the man who had abandoned them at my doorstep. I smiled to myself as I locked the door. Game on, Ethan. The first night with the children in my apartment was strange. Lily cried herself to sleep, curled up in the blankets like a small, frightened animal. Logan, on the other hand, sat on the couch with his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. He was trying to act tough, but I could see the confusion in his eyes. He didn't understand why his father had left them here, why his mother, who had always been the one to bend, to give in, to sacrifice, was suddenly so different. I didn't try to explain myself to him. I knew words wouldn't be enough. He had spent his whole life watching me be the weak one, the one who took every insult, every criticism, every betrayal, and still stayed. Now he was seeing someone new, someone he didn't recognize, and I could see that it scared him. But I wasn't going to apologize for changing. I was finally being the woman I should have been all along. Morning came too soon, and I woke up to the sound of arguing in the living room. "I don't want to stay here," Logan was saying, his voice filled with frustration. "I want to go home." "Dad left us here," Lily whispered back. "He said this is our home now." "No, he's just mad at Mom. He'll come back for us." I took a deep breath, sitting up in bed. I had expected this. Logan had always been close to Ethan, idolizing him in a way only a son could. He had learned from his father that strength meant control, that winning an argument meant making the other person feel small. I had spent years being the one who shrank, the one who folded. But not anymore. I walked into the living room, and both kids stopped talking when they saw me. "You don't have to stay," I told Logan calmly. "If you want to go back to your father, you can." He looked at me, startled. "You're just going to let me go?" "I won't force you to be here, but I think you should ask yourself, why did your father drop you off here in the first place?" Logan frowned. "Because he's mad at you." "And what about you? Did you do anything wrong?" His mouth opened, then closed. I could see the wheels turning in his head. Ethan had always made it clear that I was the problem, that I was the unreasonable one. Logan had grown up believing that. But now, for the first time, he was starting to see the cracks in his father's perfect image. He looked away. "I just want things to go back to the way they were." I nodded. "I understand, but they won't." Lily hugged her knees. "Are you and Dad really getting divorced?" I sat down across from them. "Yes." "Why?" Logan's voice was sharp, accusing. "Because I deserve better," I said simply. He scoffed. "You just want to ruin everything." "I want to be happy," I corrected. "And you should want that too. Not just for me, but for yourself, for your sister, for all of us." He didn't say anything. I knew it would take time. Years of manipulation didn't disappear overnight. But I had time now, and I wasn't going to waste it. Over the next few days, I settled into a new routine with the kids. I made breakfast, but I didn't force them to eat if they didn't want to. I did my work, and I didn't hover over them, demanding their attention. I gave them space. Logan stayed distant, but Lily slowly began to soften. She would sit next to me while I worked, asking questions about my job. "You like it?" she asked one evening. "Yes." "More than being home with us?" There was a hesitancy in her voice, a fear that I might say yes. I smiled, brushing her hair back. "I like that I can take care of myself. And I like that I can take care of you too." She seemed to think about that, then nodded. But just when I thought I might finally be making progress, Ethan decided to remind me that he wasn't done playing games. It started with a phone call. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered anyway. "Hello?" "You're corrupting my children." Ethan's voice was cold, clipped. "Teaching them to disrespect their father." I rolled my eyes. "What do you want, Ethan?" "You think you've won? You haven't. The kids belong with me." I let out a short laugh. "Then why did you leave them here?" Silence. I pressed on. "You thought this would break me, didn't you? That I'd fall apart the moment I had to take care of them alone? But guess what? I'm fine. And so are they." "You're delusional if you think this will last," he snapped. "Logan will never choose you?" That one hurt, but I didn't let it show. "That's his choice. Not yours." Ethan exhaled sharply. "You want a war, Nora? Fine. You'll get one." The line went dead. I stared at my phone, my heart pounding. I knew Ethan. He wasn't just talking. He was planning something. and I had to be ready. The next day, I found out exactly what he had done. I went to pick up Lily and Logan from school, but when I arrived, they weren't there. Panic surged through me as I rushed inside, asking the teacher where they were. "Oh," she said, blinking in surprise. "Their father picked them up an hour ago." My blood turned to ice. Ethan had taken them. My hands trembled as I gripped my phone, dialing Ethan's number with more force than necessary. It rang once, twice, then went straight to voicemail. I called again. Same result. My heart pounded against my ribs as I stormed out of the school, my mind racing through possibilities. He had taken them. He had done exactly what I feared. But why? What was he planning? I forced myself to take deep breaths. To think. Ethan wasn't impulsive. He was calculated, manipulative. He wouldn't have taken them without a plan. This wasn't about the kids. This was about control, about punishing me for daring to leave him. I swallowed hard and headed straight for his house. My old house. The house I had given up for my freedom. I wasn't surprised to find the front door locked when I arrived, nor was I surprised when no one answered my knocking. I pounded harder. "Ethan, open the door!" Silence. I clenched my fists, resisting the urge to kick the door down. That was what he wanted, for me to lose control, to look unhinged, to make it easy for him to paint me as the unstable one. No, I wouldn't give him that satisfaction. Instead, I stepped back, pulled out my phone, and called the police. The wait felt endless. My skin crawled with unease as I stood outside, imagining my children inside, confused, scared, manipulated by the lies Ethan was undoubtedly feeding them. Logan would resist at first, but I knew Ethan would twist the situation until my son saw him as the victim. And Lily, sweet, sensitive Lily, would be torn apart trying to choose between her parents. I wouldn't let him do this to them. The police finally arrived, a young officer with tired eyes stepping out of the car. "Ma'am, what's the issue?" "My ex-husband took my children from school without my permission," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "We have joint custody, but this wasn't part of the agreement. He won't answer my calls, and I believe he's keeping them inside." The officer nodded slowly, glancing at the house. "Has there been any history of violence?" "Not physical," I admitted, "but he's emotionally manipulative. He's using the children to control me." The officer sighed. "Unfortunately, if he has legal custody, there's not much we can do unless you have a court order stating he can't take them without informing you." My stomach sank. I had been so focused on leaving, on reclaiming my life, that I hadn't thought to put legal safeguards in place. "So he can just take them?" I asked, my voice sharp with disbelief. "He's their father." The words felt like a slap. The officer must have seen the frustration on my face because he softened slightly. "I can knock on the door, see if he'll talk to me." I nodded, stepping aside as he walked up and knocked firmly. "Mr. Clark, this is Officer Daniels with the local police department. Could you please open the door?" Silence. My heart pounded. Then, footsteps. The door cracked open, and Ethan's face appeared, a smirk curling his lips. "Officer, is there a problem?" "Your ex-wife is concerned about the whereabouts of your children. She says you picked them up without notifying her." Ethan's smirk widened. "As their father, I didn't think I needed permission to take them home." I could hear Lily's muffled voice inside, asking something, but before I could call out to her, Ethan stepped forward, blocking my view. "They're fine," he added. "They're with their family." His words were pointed, a knife hidden beneath silk. The officer nodded slowly. "Be that as it may, it's best if you both communicate about these things." "Of course," Ethan said smoothly. "I was just about to call her." Liar. The officer turned to me. "Ma'am, I suggest you go home for now. If you believe this is a legal issue, you'll need to settle it in court." Ethan's smirk deepened. He had won this round. For now. I forced myself to turn away, my nails digging into my palms as I walked back to my car. I wasn't giving up. If Ethan wanted a war, he was going to get one. I spent the entire night researching custody laws, calling lawyers, and preparing for the battle ahead. By morning, I had a plan. I wasn't the same woman Ethan used to manipulate. This time, I was ready to fight, and I would win. The morning light filtered through my window, but I hadn't slept. My mind was a battlefield, strategies and counter-strategies swirling in an endless storm. Ethan thought he had won. He thought he could manipulate the system, use the children as pawns in his twisted game. But he underestimated me. The old Nora, the one who bent, who sacrificed, who suffered in silence, was gone. This time I was fighting back, and I would not lose. My first move was calling my lawyer. The moment his office opened, I was on the phone explaining everything. He listened patiently before sighing. "Nora, this is a tricky situation. Without a court order preventing him from taking the children, he hasn't technically broken any laws. So what can I do? We can file for an emergency custody order, but we need to prove that their well-being is at risk. I swallowed my frustration. And how long will that take? A few days? Maybe longer if Ethan fights it. Days. I clenched my jaw. That was too long. Too much time for Ethan to manipulate them further, to twist the truth until they saw me as the villain. I needed another approach. Something faster, smarter. I ended the call and sat in silence thinking. Ethan was careful, calculated, always keeping just within the lines of legality. But he had weaknesses. His arrogance, his need to control the narrative, his belief that I would always play by the rules. Fine. Let's see how he handles it when I change the game. I grabbed my phone and called the school. Hello, this is Nora Clark, Logan and Lily's mother. I need to speak with the principal. A few minutes later, I was patched through. Ms. Clark, what can I do for you? I need to report an issue. My ex-husband removed our children from school without informing me, and I want it on record that, from now on, no one is allowed to take them without my explicit consent. A pause. Do you have a court order stating that? Not yet, I admitted. But as their mother, I have the right to make this request for their safety. Another pause. I understand your concern, Ms. Clark. I'll note your request, but without a legal document, I can't enforce it. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. If nothing else, it put Ethan under scrutiny. If he tried it again, the school would at least hesitate. Next, I needed proof. Proof that Ethan was manipulating the kids, turning them against me. I scrolled through my contacts and found an old name, Samantha. A friend I had lost touch with, but once, she had been close to Ethan's sister, Harper. If anyone knew Ethan's weak spots, it was her. I hesitated before calling. Would she even pick up? After 2 rings, she answered, Nora? Wow, it's been ages. I know, and I hate that I'm calling out of the blue like this, but I need your help. What's wrong? I took a deep breath and explained. About Ethan, about the children, about how he had taken them and was trying to turn them against me. Samantha listened in silence, and when I finished, she exhaled sharply. That bastard. I always knew he was bad, but this? I need information. Anything I can use to prove he's unfit to have full custody. A beat of silence. Then, actually, I might have something. My pulse quickened. What? Harper used to brag about how Ethan had backup plans in case you ever tried to leave. She mentioned something about hidden accounts, money he kept off the books. If you can prove financial dishonesty, it could help your case. Hidden money. Of course. Ethan had always been careful, but not perfect. If I could find proof, it would shatter his credibility in court. Can you get me details? I'll try. Give me a day or 2. It was more than I had hoped for. Thank you, Samantha. Really. Don't thank me yet. Just be careful. Ethan's not the type to lose gracefully. I knew that better than anyone. The next step was getting the kids back, and I needed to act fast. I knew Ethan's routine. He liked control, order. He would keep them home today, playing the doting father. But by tomorrow, he would need to get back to his life. That was my opportunity. I parked outside the house and waited. Hours passed. The sun began to set. Then, finally, movement. The front door opened and Ethan stepped out, alone. I watched as he got into his car and drove off. My stomach tightened. This was it. I took a deep breath, got out of my car, and walked up to the house. I knocked. No answer. I knocked again, louder. Logan? Lily? It's Mommy. A rustling sound inside. Then the door cracked open. Lily peeked out, her eyes uncertain. Mom? Relief flooded me. Sweetheart, let me in. She hesitated. Dad said we can't. My heart clenched. I know, baby, but I just want to talk. She chewed her lip. Then slowly, she stepped back. The door opened just enough for me to slip inside. The house was eerily quiet. Where's Logan? I asked. In his room. Can you get him? She nodded and disappeared down the hall. A moment later, both of them stood in front of me, their expressions guarded. I knelt down to their level. Listen to me. I know Dad is telling you things, and I know this is confusing, but I love you. No matter what happens, that will never change. Logan crossed his arms. Dad said you only care about yourself. A dagger to the heart. I forced myself to stay calm. Is that what you really believe? He hesitated. Lily shifted uncomfortably. He said you're trying to take us away. I swallowed hard. I'm trying to make sure you're safe, that you're happy. That's all I've ever wanted. Logan looked down. Doubt. It was small, but it was there. I reached out, gently taking Lily's hand. I want you to come home. Dad said we live here now, Logan muttered. I closed my eyes for a brief second, then opened them. Logan, Lily, do you want to stay here? Silence. Then Lily whispered, "I want to go home." Logan hesitated, but finally nodded. My heart soared. "Okay," I said softly. "Then let's go." I stood, taking their hands, and led them toward the door. But just as I reached for the handle, it twisted from the other side. The door swung open. Ethan stood there. His expression darkened as his gaze flicked between me and the children. "Going somewhere?" My pulse pounded, but I stood my ground. "Yes, we're going home." His eyes burned with fury. This is their home now. Logan and Lily tensed beside me. I squeezed their hands. "No, Ethan, it's not." For the first time, something flickered in his expression. Uncertainty. He hadn't expected this. He hadn't expected them to choose me. I met his gaze, unwavering. "Move." A tense moment stretched between us. Then slowly he stepped aside. I didn't wait. I led my children out the door, into the fading sunlight, and toward freedom. The war wasn't over. But I had won this battle, and I wasn't stopping now. As I drove away from Ethan's house with Logan and Lily in the back seat, silence filled the car. The weight of everything that had happened pressed down on me. But there was no time to break down. I stole a glance at the rearview mirror. Logan was looking out the window, his jaw tight, while Lily clutched her seatbelt, her fingers trembling slightly. They were scared, confused. And I couldn't blame them. I had just ripped them from the life Ethan had tried to trap them in, and they didn't know if they were making the right choice. I had to be strong for them. "Are you hungry?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, normal. Lily nodded hesitantly. Logan didn't respond. I pulled into a diner on the way home, hoping food would bring some normalcy back. We sat in a booth, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. The kids barely touched their food. Logan kept glancing at his phone, probably waiting for Ethan to call. I needed to keep them talking, to keep them engaged, to remind them that they were safe. "Do you remember when we used to come here?" I asked, stirring my coffee. "Lily, you always ordered pancakes, even at night." "I still like pancakes," she murmured. "Then we should come back here more often," I said with a small smile. Logan's phone buzzed. He looked at the screen, then at me. "It's Dad." My stomach tightened. "Are you going to answer it?" He hesitated, then shook his head. "Not right now." That was progress. We finished our meal and headed home. The apartment felt warmer, safer than ever. I let the kids get comfortable, giving them space, but I kept my phone close. I knew Ethan wouldn't let this go, and I was right. My phone rang late into the night. Calls, voicemails, text messages, the same demands, the same accusations, then the threats. "You have no right to do this. You think you can take them from me? You'll regret this. You're making a huge mistake, Nora." I ignored them all, but I didn't sleep. I stayed up, my mind racing. This wasn't over. Ethan wasn't the kind of man to accept defeat, and I knew he was planning something. The next morning, I called my lawyer again. "We need to file that emergency custody order now," I said. "Today." He agreed and got to work immediately. But something gnawed at me. This wasn't going to be enough. Ethan was too powerful, too connected. He would find a way to twist this, to make me look like the villain. And then Samantha called. "Nora, I found something," she said, her voice urgent. "Ethan's accounts, the ones he's been hiding, they're dirty. Money laundering, offshore transfers, it's bad." My breath caught. "Are you sure?" "I have the documents. If you use this in court, it'll destroy him." This was it. My ace. I told my lawyer, and he agreed it could shift the case in my favor. But I knew Ethan wouldn't go down without a fight, and I was right. That night, I heard something outside my apartment. A noise. A shuffle. I peeked through the blinds, my heart hammering. A shadow moved near my car. My blood ran cold. Ethan. I locked the doors, checked the windows. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. "Nora?" Ethan's voice was low, controlled, but there was an edge of fury underneath. "You think you've won?" I gripped the phone tightly. "Go home, Ethan." "This isn't over," he hissed. "You have no idea what you've started." The call ended. I checked on the kids. They were asleep, unaware. But I couldn't sleep. I sat by the door, listening, waiting. The night stretched on. Morning came. No sign of Ethan, but the feeling of unease didn't fade. Then the news came. A call from Samantha. "Nora, Ethan's dead." I froze. "What?" "They found him this morning. Car accident, but what? The police think it wasn't an accident." My breath caught. "What do you mean?" "They're saying his brakes were cut." A chill ran down my spine. Ethan was dead. But someone had made sure of it, and I had no idea who or why.